Hi folks, it's your host Chris D'Amato here. Just wanted to first and foremost apologize for the delay on this episode. As you may know as a fan of our podcast, 6A, we've been riddled with delays. There's been a lot of personal developments in our lives, not to mention our new baby Sal. I just wanted to offer my apologies and just an assurance that we're going to take a little bit of a hiatus after this retrospective so that we can record all of 6B and then put it out at a consistent schedule. So once you start seeing episodes from 6B, there's not going to be any of these month-long delays between episodes. I want to take the time in between this season and the next season to make sure that we record our episodes, get them in the can, and then can release them on a consistent schedule. Also, your feedback is always welcome. We received some comments that Sal is, our son Sal, our new baby, is very cute, but I promise you he will not be appearing on any future podcasts. I know that he presents some audio challenges. I'm not Francis Ford Coppola, so I'm not willing to ruin some artistic project of mine by forcing my kid into it. So thank you all so much. We're very excited to cover 6B for you. For now, enjoy part 2 of our retrospective. Thank you so much, and we're looking forward to finishing this great series with all of you. Thank you for those of you who have stuck with us from the beginning or joined us along the ride along the way. We appreciate each and every one of you. Check us out on social media. Our meta accounts have been killed, unfortunately, for no good reason. We're still there, but we can't respond or post anything. And we are on Patreon. That's patreon.com/TheSopranosPodcast. You can just support us as a thank you. Make sure we can keep cranking these out. Or you can join our $50 tier, which lets you interact with us on a monthly video call. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time. Well, I think it's about that time. One of my favorite segments of our retrospectives, the listener mail segment.
Boy.
We got quite a bit here.
I'm nervous.
Oh, don't be nervous. It's mostly very positive.
All right.
Chris, I'm fairly negative a lot of the time.
I'm not going to use full names unless somebody explicitly gives me permission to do so. So this is from Pedro R.
All right, Pedro.
Hey guys, been listening since episode 1. Do you guys ever think of using audio clips from the episodes? Maybe an editing nightmare? I just think the impact would be huge. But then again, we wouldn't have the Feach and Allen impressions, which are fantastic. Just a thought, Pedro.
I was going to say, our impressions aren't good enough for you.
You got a problem with my impression, motherfucker! No,
Sal didn't move an inch.
So it's two things, Pedro. One, it is, as you correctly and astutely pointed out, an editing nightmare. The other piece of it is, even though we are technically and legally covered under critic or parody or whatever, I just don't want to even bother with the chance that something could get pinged or snagged by an algorithm. In fact, our meta pages, Facebook and Instagram, for the Sopranos podcast, I don't post on anymore because Meta just shut it down, and I can't get a human being to come and see what we are and reactivate us.
That's right.
It just got flagged, and I can't get a person to do anything. So
Zuckerberg, not a fan.
Yeah,
he's not a fan.
Zuckerberg's not a person, so
Zuckerbot, not fan.
So the idea of that happening to the actual podcast makes me physically ill. So I just don't even want to take the chance. So we talk about it with luster and excitement.
We're going to be a low-tech podcast to the end.
This is an email from Tracy P. Hi, team. Tracy here from Melbourne, Australia.
G'day.
Writing to express my sincere thanks for the material you so lovingly produce on your podcast. I've managed to dodge every Sopranos plot point and spoiler for 25 years and finally dedicated a month of my life to watching this most captivating television show. 91 episodes in 34 days. Ridiculous, my poor family. But what an investment. To help me process this whirlwind of screen magic, I listen to you guys, unpack, analyze, agree, and disagree. It's like being able to tap into the water cooler conversation that would have happened had I actually watched the show in live time. So thank you. The show was definitely not made to be binged, so I will watch it again a little more slowly to properly absorb and respect the importance of each and every character. I've listened to all your retrospectives and will now listen to you break down each episode of Season 6. Take as long as you need. Thank you. We did.
Thank you.
We certainly did.
The only listener that will give us that.
Very understanding, yeah.
It is this season that saw me cry for the first time while watching. It is this season that elicited a physical response from me. This is the season. So bring on your meticulous analysis. It'll help me feel complete. With great thanks and appreciation, Tracy.
Oh, thank you, Tracy.
I love that.
That's a
Thanks,
ringing
Tracy.
endorsement of season 6. Wouldn't you say
That's
so?
why I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for listening from Australia. We have quite a strong listenership in Australia, actually. You're not the first, and you might not even be the last in this mail segment. This is an email from Kate D. Hi, guys. Absolutely love the podcast. I'm listening all the way from Melbourne, Australia.
Wow.
Your neighbors. And I am so grateful for the work and effort you put into your analysis. I've been listening via Spotify, and the episodes stop after Season 6, Episode 2. And I'm so worried I can't listen to the rest as I do my rewatch. Any idea where I can find the rest of your episodes? Thanks so much. Kate, you caught the podcast in production mode. We are actively producing new episodes as we speak. We're not done yet. You did happen to also catch us on an episode. We've unveiled Sal to the world at this point. But Lily and I had a baby this year. I ran for public office in an election that I just won.
Woo!
Jordan started a new job. We've all been insanely busy. So this has been a tough year to do the podcast as religiously as we had been in previous years. My hope is to schedule Season 6 Part 2 in such a way that there won't be any gaps for the listeners. It may take us a longer gap in between, but I'm going to record enough so that for the listeners, it's out every 2 weeks. So I apologize for the shoddiness there, but I will make sure that whenever the next season comes out, there won't be any gaps for the listeners, no matter how long it takes us to produce them. So
Hear, hear.
Thank you for being patient with us, though. We appreciate you listening.
Thank you, Kate.
This is Dave C. He's written us many times throughout the years. Greetings from Mass. I've been meaning to drop you a note for a couple weeks. Let me say I'm relieved. After some initial cursing due to the delays in episode releases, I became legitimately worried that something was awry, a health issue, whatever. A baby was passing out of Lily.
Technically a health issue.
So glad to hear all is well, and I guess there was actually something positive causing the delay. Congrats, best of luck. I listened yesterday to Mayhem. Wow. Jordan's analysis at the end, tying things to Greek mythology, was just beautiful. Season 6 was never really my favorite, but you're all giving me a better look at it. In retrospect, I think the long hiatus that the show was on was evident in the way Season 6 comes out of the gate. Be forewarned, since you're coming up on the end, you should expect at least one more email from me. It'll probably be some form of rebuttal to that prick Alan's email post-Season 5, and not nearly as eloquent.
Whoa!
Oh, shots fired.
All the fans are fighting.
As I've mentioned previously, I have a long commute these days, and it gives me time to ponder many things, important things like this #iRoll. Warm regards, Mr. Kaluch, Dave in Linfield, Massachusetts.
Aw, thanks for writing again, friend.
Linfield.
Anytime,
all right.
Dave. I enjoy your emails, and I appreciate that you keep in touch with us. Spicy words there. I wonder if Alan's going to respond.
I hope he does.
Dude, Alan getting called out by a masshole? Damn. All right, okay.
Russell G. Dear Chris, Jordan, Paul, and Lily, what do you hear? What do you say? First, I'll just say that I love the show. You've been great company on my first rewatch. Here's why I'm writing in. This time through the show, I sometimes notice the sound of what sounds like squealing train wheels, even in places where it doesn't really make sense to hear them. Here are a few examples. Season 1, Jackie's funeral, wide shot after Tony says those people went through World War II. Season 3, Chris getting made, faintly in the background as Silvio makes the joke about Chris being scared in the car on the way over. Season 4, Johnny Sack beats up the guy he thinks laughed about Ginny as he's leaving the bar to follow him to his car. Season 4, Whitecaps, Adriana talking to FBI agent before she leaves the car. Season 4, Zellman leaves house, sees Tony drive by in his SUV. And then one that is a spoiler. So now I'm willing to admit I might be grasping at straws. I've never been to New Jersey or New York. Maybe there are squealing trains all over the place.
There are.
But the scene where Chris is getting made in particular doesn't sound like it's just part of the general soundscape. It's creepy and fits in well with the crow he sees in the window. Also, train sounds kind of evoke Michael in the bathroom in The Godfather. Anyway, it'd be cool to hear the gang discuss sound design on the show in general at some point. All the best, Russell from London, Ontario.
Nice.
Russell, cool question. I can say, having lived in the New York City area, especially this part of the country, Jordan's from Long Island, I live in Jersey, Paul is still in the city.
Inescapable.
Trains everywhere. That is a sound you just you'll hear all the time. The squealing wheels of a train. And our train infrastructure is ailing and miserable. So I don't know what they have in Canada, but it's rusty, it's run down, it's rickety, it's loud. And if you're in the city, especially like Michael in Brooklyn, that restaurant is right under an above ground train. So especially underneath those above ground trains, it's loud as hell, and it's just a part of life in this part of the country.
Yeah, though, admittedly, it might be a blend. While I was listening to that list of moments, I was trying to think, is there any commonality amongst them? And other than that, they are significant moments. I don't think so. I think it might be a combination of things. I think it might be that, yeah, you know what? Hey, New York, New Jersey, ton of trains all the time, can't escape it. And The Sopranos is a show that certainly embraces its environment and would leave those kinds of things in. That said, they're pretty good about sound design stuff. I think, I would not put it past them to have inserted something like that to ratchet up tension in certain moments.
Remember, this is the show that deliberately leaves in James Gandolfini's labored breathing, which they could cut out if they wanted to.
So, column A, column B.
Yeah, they did one episode, I don't know if it was a train sound, but it might have been car sounds as it pushes in on Tony's face and it cuts to him going up to the country. So wanting to get out of the crunch of North Jersey. It raises the tension in that moment with Michael. In the restaurant, of course, the screeching of the train leads right up to him standing up and shooting the gun. I think it's credible that it would just be there, but it's also, I think it seems like a deliberate choice.
Correct.
They've done some really cool stuff with sound on the show, including in a lot of the dreams. They use a lot of cool sound stuff.
The rickety boardwalk, squealing throughout the entirety of Funhouse.
Yeah, Funhouse.
Ooh, yeah.
The horse clopping in the test dream because he's at the plaza and they have the carriages outside by the park, and he's probably hearing that in his mind, but it's infecting its way into the dream, which also brings in Pyoma. I mean, yeah, they do a lot. Sound design on the show is masterful. That's the cool thing about The Sopranos is, who knows, when we run out of episodes, we're not sure what we're going to do, but we could pick an individual element like that and talk at length about how masterful it is. The sound, the lighting, the wardrobe. So thank you very much for your letter, Russ. We appreciate it. Well, even knows who this Russ bastard is.
What sections y'all sit in?
This letter's from Susie B. I've been binging and loving your podcast. I just finished Season 5, Episode 1, Wildfire. One thing you guys failed to notice or mention was the double entendre of the word mole, both a skin lesion, sometimes pre- or cancerous, and a rat. The fact that Tony was dealing with both the lesions and Adriana in the same episode is definitely not a coincidence.
Oh, yeah.
Not sure if you get to the same conclusion in later episodes, but I wanted to mention it when it was freshly on my mind. Sure. Thanks again for such a detailed and insightful podcast.
Susie, we just wanted to make sure you would notice it.
That's correct. We were waiting for your email, Susie.
Just kidding. Thanks, Susie.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But that is a good catch. We appreciate when our fans... We're not arrogant. We love when our fans point out stuff we miss because it enriches the show for all of us. That's the point. It's a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for your contribution. Listen, Paul can't catch them all right?
Thanks, Susie, but I am arrogant.
This show has international reach. This is from Magnus N.E. Hi, guys. Big fan from Oslo, Norway here. Like Chris and Paul, I've watched and rewatched The Sopranos for over 20 years now, and your excellent analyses have helped put the show in a brand new perspective for me, and I'm sure a lot of other folks. As you guys are approaching the episode The Ride, I just wanted to give a small, potentially fun fact about the last scene of the episode. When Paulie and Nucci are watching Myron Florin play the accordion on the Lawrence Welk show. Florin, whose parents were Norwegian, plays a song he calls Johnny Oslo Shotishi. I'm sure I'm not saying that right. However, the melody is from a famous Norwegian children's song called Hompititten by Alf Preussen, written, I believe, in the 40s or 50s. While that in and of itself isn't much of a fun fact, the song is about someone taking a ride in a car on a bumpy road. The lyrics include phrases like Vi homper op ogned, which translates to we're bouncing up and down, and most Norwegian kids have at some point in their life been on someone's knee singing this song and bouncing. Since the episode is titled The Ride, the show and shows the mostly good, harmless fun of carnival rides, Tony and Christopher going for a fun ride, Tony giving Domenica a ride, not to mention Paulie and Nucci seemingly starting to patch things up after a bumpy ride, I saw myself in awe over the level of detail that has been put into making The Sopranos. In a lot of other shows, I would have assumed that this is all just a happy coincidence. The reference is, after all, very obscure. But this is The Sopranos. I can't help but be convinced that this was done intentionally. I figured I'd write to you, as it isn't a reference I think a lot of people outside Norway would get. Keep up the awesome work. I listen to you guys again and again.
Damn.
Amazing.
Holy
Amazing.
cow.
What a deep cut, man.
Nice.
Magnus, that's crazy. And the fact that someone on that writing staff or a creative team fucking pulled that out is really nuts.
Magnus and Susie are bringing it. This is awesome.
Yeah,
Magnus, that was a pull beyond our reach, so thank you so much for that.
And that really does, that adds to like how moving that ending is.
Yeah.
That he reunites with Nucci.
Right,
Wow.
and bouncing on the knee as a child would, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm, yeah.
Man. I
Great
love that.
stuff. Thank you, Magnus. This is from Lauren R. I just wanted to write and tell you guys what a big fan I am of your podcast. Admittedly, I've only just recently discovered it, and I'm not caught up. I only listen to an episode if I've just recently seen the episode, so I have it fresh, and I'm only on season 5. However, you guys have become one of my new favorite podcasts. I love the way you guys both offer in-depth and thoughtful analysis, yet still manage to point out funnier moments that really make me love the show. I feel like a lot of times when I have looked for discussions about the show online, I felt disappointed. But you offer ideas and competing insights that really help to flesh out a show that, up until now, I felt I knew front and back. There's so much, even 4 watches in, I missed. I don't have many friends that are familiar with the show, so listening to your podcast is almost like getting to talk about it with others. If any of my friends ever take my advice and start the show, I'm definitely recommending you guys as a must-listen. Have a great day, Lauren.
Oh, thank you, Lauren. It's very sweet. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Lauren.
Spread the word, Lauren. I think it's so awesome that it's 22 years old. I mean, you're Gen Z. It's awesome that Gen Z is into The Sopranos. I think it's very cool. And I think it's cool that you're into The Sopranos. And I love how many... What I love about our the fact that we have so many women writing in is our audience is... I get a look at our demographics. We're predominantly male audience, but our women are really active fans. The women who listen to our show, they write to us, they comment on things. So I think that's really awesome. And thank you, Lauren. I really appreciate... it's always interesting to me when someone in a younger generation gets their eyes on this show. I always love hearing from you. So I appreciate you writing in.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is Dave C. Once again. He emailed. We just read him back from Mass.
Addendum.
Team Soprano, Dave and Linfield, Mass. Here. Just returned from Italy and started listening to season 6, episode 8, Johnny Cakes. I actually got 15 minutes in and paused because I found myself yelling out, "Jordan, you fucking nailed it!"
Whoa.
It was at that point that Jordan's thoughts on the episode caused me to have a revelation about my own feelings on the episode. I then reflected on a previous thought I have. Did The Sopranos ever jump the shark? Is it possible that season 6 is where it happened? It didn't make sense as there are episodes in season 6 that are amazing. Members only. He mentions a bunch of things from 6B that I'm not going to talk about. But I think Johnny Cakes actually comes dangerously close. I found myself questioning if the Vito storyline was where the show went to a place that every other TV show was going at that time, where there was this movement to include content that was making a social statement. I don't have a problem with the spirit of the content. Even the storyline at a high level was very good, a gay mobster running to hide. Instead, it was the details of the story which I think was Jordan's take. The Sopranos writers always shined in being as realistic as possible, even when it was painful or not PC. I disagree with that statement, Dave, but we're going to get there. For example, Melfi's rape, Eugene's suicide, all the racist dialogue. They do it because these stories aren't believable without being realistic. They also use that realism to mess masterfully with our heads. It's because of this realism that Sopranos beats Breaking Bad as the best TV show ever. Them's fighting words to Breaking Bad fans, but I agree with you, Dave.
Big time.
In this episode, everything is far too perfect and way too serendipitous. Vito is gay, no problem. He needs to run away from the mob, of course. He runs to New Hampshire, seems logical. He lands in a town where the first guy he runs into is also gay. Starting to raise an eyebrow. Mm-hmm. That guy is gorgeous and a fireman. Starting to get too perfect. He also has fellow firemen, also gay. Really? But wait, there's a house fire. Yeah, all right, it happens. What's that, Lassie? There's a kid in there? Johnny Cakes is here to save the day, because nobody else will. Please. Hey, check it out. Turns out Johnny Cakes likes fat, greasy guys. Okay, are you smoking crack? Indeed, the problem here is sadly the writing, something we can always hang our hat on this series, but they took too many liberties here, cashing in some of the currency that they banked throughout the first 5 seasons. It is as if they trusted that the viewers would just consume whatever was served. Is it a bad episode? No, but only because the acting is amazing and actually the best part of the episode. I think it is too much of a stretch to say that if it were not for the fantastic delivery by Vito and Johnny Cakes, the episode would be a flop. Okay, finished the whole episode, and I enjoyed your analysis so much more than the actual episode. At a minimum, you augmented the experience. Nice job. Back to my question. Did The Sopranos ever jump the shark? My opinion, it got close, but no. Season 6A and B are far too good. Maybe another season would have been too many. During the wrap-up, I would be interested in hearing your thoughts on how the series landed at the end and how you think the series would have gone had it continued for another season. Can't believe this thing of ours is coming to an end. A little sad, eh? Regards, David Linfield. Still riding the wave with you, folks.
Nice.
Well, thanks for another great letter. Yeah, I'm glad you were able to perhaps sympathize with my point of view on that episode. Did The Sopranos ever jump the shark?
No.
Flatly no?
No.
I don't think it can jump the shark.
Jumping the shark means that it's past the point where it will ever be great again. And it never hit that point. No spoilers for 6B.
Okay. Is that what that means?
So, jumping the shark comes from that episode of Happy Days.
Where Fonzie jumps over a shark.
That is the point at which the show is like, okay, we're never going back to the good old days. It's over. The show needs to be off the air.
And probably we should have stopped it before.
Jumping the shark
is
always a negative thing. Then.
Yes.
Is that what you're
Correct.
saying? Oh, I see. Then no, I don't think Sopranos ever does that. But I will say, with no spoilers, it does at some point allow its existential, philosophical, abstract themes overpower some of just what we would call like the ordinary gangster story of it. But that, of course, was always the point. And I think it leaves some fans who are maybe not here for that in the dust, but ultimately, again, that's a good thing. I don't think we jumped the shark, though. So.
I was going to say, I don't think that's jumping the shark. I think it just means that some people don't care for it anymore because it gets a little too existential.
Right.
But I like it.
No, of course. I think of people like my parents,
Sure.
who are wonderful people, wonderfully smart people, but like they were really frustrated by episodes like Test Dream
Sure.
and everything with Kevin Finnerty, and like they never understood those episodes. And I can't mention the biggest thing that they're frustrated by, but it's a show that for people that are not used to thinking that way, it can be tough.
Absolutely, but I don't think that qualifies as jumping the shark.
You're totally right.
Yeah.
Because I didn't really understand that term. Okay. Yeah.
I also don't think a show like Sopranos can jump the shark, and here's why. I feel like jumping the shark, and maybe I'm wrong on this, who knows, but I feel like jumping the shark works when there's a formula, and like they're out of things to do, but The Sopranos never has a formula. They could always come up with a new character, come up with a new thing. It's like you get to a point in Full House where it's like, we need to have twins here now. You know, It's like a lot of times you'll see a pregnancy, you'll see that type of thing happen, where I think The Sopranos just is consistently bringing on new things.
And I also, the only thing I'm going to push back, I appreciate your perspective, Dave. I don't agree necessarily with the Vito thing. I found your analysis very entertaining, though. I don't subscribe to the idea that The Sopranos is necessarily hyper-realism either. The Wire is a show that is hyper-realistic. You're not going to see the Virgin Mary on the stage of a strip club in The Wire. All of the music, with one exception early in season 1, comes from a practical source. Things like that. That is hyper-realism. The Sopranos has hyper-realistic moments when it needs to, but it also ventures into the surreal and the fantastic at times. Whether or not that element worked in the Vito storyline is up for debate. But I don't necessarily subscribe to the fact that it's bad because it's not necessarily plausible. Does that make sense?
I've always said that The Sopranos is a painting, whereas The Wire is a photograph.
That's a great analysis.
Yeah. I'll quote Kubrick. Real is good. Interesting is better. And I don't care how real the Vito storyline is. It's not interesting. Not in its execution.
Sure.
Not in the overall. Is what it is. I thought Dave's breakdown of what's problematic in episode 8 is really good. And I'll share a brief story about a friend of mine, Jim. We grew up together in Boston and Italian American, went to high school together, went to college together. We have a lot in common. One thing we don't is our political and social dimension. He's much more conservative than me. And he was asking me how 6A is going, because he's a big fan of our show, loves The Sopranos, because he hadn't caught up in a little while. And I said, oh, it's been going well. Actually, we're kind of disagreeing on the pod about the one storyline, the Vito storyline. Two of us don't seem to like it. Two of us don't love it, but make a little more room for it. What do you think, Jim? And Jim didn't hesitate, didn't need time to think about it. He said, Vito was just gay. There wasn't anything else interesting about him. And I said, that's my line. And that is what I said, which I mistakenly, I guess, thought was a fairly progressive position. But the past 20 years has not been very good to the idea of let's essentialize this gay character. Like, it's just every bit about him as being gay. He knows Calvin Klein by sight because he's gay. He's blowing this guy in a car because he's gay. He's dressed up as one of the Village People because he's gay. So even a limited actor like Joe Ganascoli has a very tough job making anything interesting about this character who doesn't have specific characteristics. He's got gay characteristics after gay characteristics after gay characteristics. And that's where the story hits the wall, I think.
He's a come-from-behind kind of guy, Paul.
Oh!
Hey, good news. Good news. I thought we'd be without it. Our friend Alan.
Yay!
Alan!
Hell yeah!
I don't do voices anymore for the emails, but I will don the voice for Alan. Hello again, chaps. Greetings from Alan, your old English sparring partner in the Netherlands.
Yay! Yes.
As you know, I have had such fun engaging with you in this pod during these last couple of years. I do look forward to the episodes dropping, and I talk at you during them like some mad raving monk. Traditionally, at this point, as the end of a season approaches, I've compiled a shopping list of bones I want to pick with you all.
There we go.
You won't be surprised to learn that I have another for this season 6A. Mm-hmm. However, what might surprise you, and certainly surprised me, is that the bones have turned into compliments. This season of the pod has been nothing short of a triumph. Compliments to all four of you.
Oh,
Damn.
You really seem to have upped your collective game, and also become very good podcasters to boot. Chris and Lily do a great general job of anchoring and steering the ship, while Paul and Jordan come in with great insights. In sports lingo, Alan, that's what's called play-by-play and color. The two highlights for me were when Paul unlocked episode 2, joined the club for me. At one point, he advised us to not attempt to unpuzzle the puzzle of the dream sequence. Instead, he encouraged us to just let it wash all over us and see what sticks, what resonates, and what is meaningful to us. That was such good advice, and I actively enjoyed the episode free from worrying that I wasn't getting it, like I was too dumb or something. Furthermore, I've taken that approach now to anything I watch, and using that perspective when thinking back on things I have already seen and struggled with. Oddly, I do this with paintings and music already, but hitherto never thought it could work with movies or TV. Paul, imagine me making a chef's kiss. Action.
Oh.
Thank you. Now to Jordan.
Oh, dear.
In the final section of episode... you have history with this guy. In the final section of episode 3, Mayhem, our Mr. J went on a flight of fancy, what he called an academic stop-off, which for me was without doubt the best and most enriching 5 minutes of any podcast I have ever heard. I actually agree. That's a top 5 moment of our podcast, for sure.
Thank you.
It was a delve into Greek and Buddhist notions of death, but beyond the literal, and into the realms of kinds of deaths, rebirths, etc. The wonderful thing about it was that it rose to match the aspirations of the show, which can straddle our pleasure at simple slapstick shenanigans to the deepest possible meanings we give our very existence. That is why I love the show, and it still gives after repeated viewing. I listen to podcasts about it to help me reach some of the corners of it that I cannot quite put my finger on. Jordan did that perfectly here because he was not doing so to sound clever or erudite or elite. He was doing so to share, commune, and proffer suggestions, and that is what I come here for.
Thank you, Alan.
Bravo to all of you. Keep up the fine work. Best wishes, Alan.
Aw, thanks, Alan.
Thanks, Alan.
Cheers, buddy.
What an arc for our show that we got a wholly pleasant and totally non-combative email from Alan.
Well, I got some bones to pick with you, Alan.
Oh!
Just kidding.
And he made it a family thing.
Correct.
Without even trying. His son, he brought his kid in.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Thank you, Alan. Keep listening. Keep writing in. We'll keep putting you on. We're almost done here. Got a couple short ones to wrap us up. This one is from Tykel F. Hi, Chris, Jordan, Paul, and Lily. I love listening to your podcast and appreciate everyone's different perspectives. I listen to you guys while I'm at work, which really helps the day go by faster. He asks a couple questions here. Do you guys think Tony is a better dad than his father? Johnny Boy.
Wow.
No. No, I don't. I think they're the same. They're different, but ultimately the same. I think they love their children, and I think they both do a lot of damage to their children. I think both. I think what it means to be a parent changed generationally from one to the other, but it's...
Do you think Johnny Boy ever had any insight? We have a lot less time with Johnny Boy than we do Tony. But do you think Johnny Boy had this, I don't want my son involved kind of thing that Tony has with AJ?
No.
No.
Does that make Tony... I mean, I could argue that makes at least Tony has the ability somewhere within him to see that the cycle should break.
But okay. If AJ was vivacious and strong and canny and cunning, right, then I think Tony would want him in.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. Yeah.
I agree.
I think...
and Meadow's a girl, so he wouldn't want... You know what I mean?
Right.
I think Tony has some skills that his dad didn't, and I think he even spends some time sharpening them as a parent. I'm not convinced it really helps, particularly the one kid who I think needs a lot of help, unfortunately. Man, thanks for the easy question. Damn.
There's more, I think.
Do you think... Yeah, there's a couple here. I'm not going to ask all of them because there's actually quite a lot that are going to take up too much time for the podcast, but I'm going to ask some key ones that I think could be fun. Can you guys do a top 3 worst characters on The Sopranos? Mine is Father Phil, Skip, and Russ Fagoli.
That's a pretty untoppable list.
Pretty respectable list, yeah.
I would throw Noah in there.
Oh, yeah, Noah. Absolutely.
Noah sucks, but definitely Father Phil. I think we can all agree on that. When you say worst, I assume you're not saying quality of the character. I assume you mean like they walk on screen and you're like, fuck that guy.
Yeah, just totally unenjoyable, right?
Yeah. Russ Fagoli's a good one. That was a good pull.
That's a good pull.
Unpleasant prick. Elliot Kupferberg has his moments. He's very smug.
Oh, I like Elliot.
I like Peter Bogdanovich. I don't know that I don't know. That's interesting.
Oh, how about Meadow's therapist?
Oh,
nice.
Wedgie
Nice one-off
Cobbler.
there, yep.
That stupid bitch almost sent my daughter to Barcelona.
It's a hot
I
school.
strongly dislike Dr. Kennedy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Kennedy, that's a great one.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's left an impression on me.
Janice, I think, is like the best worst.
Best worst. Yeah.
I want to save this question for after 6B to answer it, but I'm going to ask it now. Who's the best villain? We're going to get there.
Ooh.
But I think that's a question for
That's
the series
retrospective question. Yeah.
Keep the episodes going, and I hope keep the episodes going, and I hope you guys can do another show to break down. That would be great. Thanks, Tyler.
We're thinking about it.
We are. We're talking about what comes next. This is Emily Y. I just finished 611, and it was one of your best, and I've enjoyed every episode so far. Thank you for keeping this going. I know it's not the highest priority in your busy lives, but I get excited when I see a new episode drop. Your perspectives are unique and insightful in a way many of the other pods are not. Even if it took you longer breaks between drops, I would love to see you guys continue some special editions after the finale in the last season. Many Saints of Newark? Hated it the first watch, warmed up more the second. The new David Chase documentary on HBO. The Women of the Sopranos episode with Lily. Lots of exclamation points. A show you all think ranks close to The Sopranos. Nothing will ever rank higher. Thanks again, Emily. Emily, thank you for your email. We just had this conversation a few minutes ago off air about what comes next because we are hitting the last season. We enjoy podcasting with each other. We get so much positivity. I think a lot of people do appreciate what we've put out there. It feels like a shame to just stop. But the question is, what comes next? The challenges we discussed were that, A, it's hard to go from The Sopranos to something else because The Sopranos is, in many of our opinions, the best. That's why we decided to do the podcast in the first place, was to break down what we all kind of connected to. There are options. One option would be to go with the direct successors to The Sopranos, which in my opinion, if you follow the trail of the writer's room, would be Mad Men or Boardwalk Empire. We can go the gangster route. We can do more Sopranos, pick a subject or a particular technical element and keep breaking down The Sopranos. Many Saints of Newark, I think we don't really want to, but feel a little obligated.
That's what it would sound like.
I think we feel we feel obligated to because it's technically Sopranos content, but none of us are looking forward to doing that, and I think we want to be excited about whatever it is we do next. Gangster movies are a possibility, or other high echelon prestige dramas, like stuff that isn't necessarily related to The Sopranos, but stuff like The Wire or Breaking Bad or something like that. We don't know exactly. We have to, but here's what we do know. We are thinking about it. We do want to continue something, and whatever it is has to be something we're going to enjoy as much as you will, because if we're not enjoying ourselves doing it out of obligation, the audience isn't going to enjoy it.
And we started this podcast around the beginning of the pandemic, so this has given us a lot of joy in a time when we needed it.
Correct.
So we hope that we have the opportunity to keep giving it to you guys.
Well said. Anything else on this subject of what comes next? We have some decisions to make, but no? All right. This one's from Diana R. Hi, Sopranos Podcast. I started watching the show this past winter and have just finished. I'm hoping you would all discuss something that has been bothering me for a while. Why does Carmela continue to be so obtuse about certain characters' untimely death or disappearance? Not just her, but also her daughter and other women in her social circle seem to turn a blind eye. It makes sense to keep up appearances in public. What I find disturbing is that Carmela never seems to break kayfabe, even privately. I love the use of the word kayfabe there.
Oh, yeah.
For example, Jackie Jr. His involvement in drugs makes his death seem plausible, but it's odd that neither Carmela nor Rosalie questioned Tony's involvement, or at the very least that Jackie got into the life himself. Fast forward to Adriana. Carmela is so incredulous about her sudden disappearance that she can't help but speculate on the reason, even with Tony, on several occasions. However, she never really connects her disappearance with Adriana's tangential involvement with the mob through Chris. I don't know if Carmela is actually unaware or is just in deep denial about the realities of Tony's business. Surely she must know that he has killed people, right? Thank you so much for your coverage of this show. It's so well done and incredibly thoughtful. My only complaint is that Lily isn't in every cast. Diana.
Agreed.
Lily, you want to take this one? Why doesn't Carmela break kayfabe, as it's called?
Yeah, I think it's a defense mechanism. I think like you have to do certain things to survive, and so it's a combination of willful ignorance and self-protection.
You have a hammer. You're living in a glass house. You swing it, everything around you crumbles. That's what it would mean to confront the truth of all of this, right?
Right.
Is that the idea that she almost has to protect herself with ignorance?
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. Like even just starting with Big Pussy, right? She has to know somewhere that he got whacked, right? Like everybody just disappears in her life.
Or joins witness protection. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's self-protection. Ultimately.
Yeah. Look, I think these women, they all understand the contract that they've signed. I give Carmela more credit than most because we see where she has crises, where she goes through periods of like, I can't take this anymore, right? She almost dissolved her marriage. But in the end, she didn't because, as Lily said, there's a self-protection that's there.
Yeah.
I think it's such a good question because we know how smart Carmela is. But I think Lily's right that smart people are not immune from the things that one has to do in their mind and their heart to survive.
Yeah. Well said. Susie B. wrote 2 emails here. I'm going to read them, but they're less questions and more just these little insights that people send as they listen. So this is Susie B. My comments on Members Only, better late than never. Members Only started as a brand name jacket in the early 80s. As it got popular and copied, it became basically the prototypical name, similar to Kleenex for tissues and Scotch tape for tape.
Okay.
We talked about this. And
I was very confused as to what one was. So thank you.
I think the meaning in the show is a double entendre, both as a style befitting New Jersey Italians of that era, and that the Mafia was really a group of members only, outsiders need not apply. And you can't really take the jacket off without risking your life.
Yeah.
Love the podcast, Susie. And then Susie wrote a second email here. Just finished listening to your take on Live Free or Die. Go back and listen to your retrospective. It totally mirrors The Wizard of Oz. Right? We talked about this earlier in the retrospective. Right from the storm and the branch hitting his car. Nothing I would have thought of on my own, but I kept thinking about as I listened. The little utopian town is Oz. Vito's Dorothy looking for her home. Once again, thanks for a great podcast, Susie.
Nice insight there, Susie. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was excellent.
We appreciate it, Susie. I love it. And, obviously, Wizard of Oz is one of the classic films, and we talked about it earlier in the retrospective, the connection with gay America. And, yeah. This is our last mail-in of the day, Michael B. So, before I read this email, I just want to put it into context for everybody that, if you're listening to this after the fact, there were numerous podcasts that came late this season because of all the stuff we've been dealing with in our personal lives. So it wasn't every 2 weeks as has been.
All right, let us have it, Michael.
So Michael B. This is undignified. Why would I ever trust a podcast and leave me holding my cock like this? You shouldn't have heard this? Well, there you go. There's the fucking problem.
Oh my god.
Irregardless, I absolutely adore The Sopranos. I have watched and rewatched it multiple times, but ever since I have started listening to your podcast, I have began rewatching through a different lens with more scrutiny and maturity. Result, my appreciation for the show has increased exponentially. Your attention to detail and hot takes you have on each episode is just fantastic. I love you guys. Thanks. That was great.
That was great.
Our biggest fight.
From Mikey B, all the way from Galway, Ireland.
Oh, wow.
P.S. Reach out if you ever decide to visit these Irish shores. I will show you Guinness and Irish music hotspots.
Awesome. Thank
Cool.
you.
I hope to God we can take you up on that, Mikey, first of all.
Yeah, listen, there is a universe of professional podcasters out there who are able to make the manufacture of content their full-time job. We love this. We wish we could do this more often, but the fact of the matter is that this is just something we do because we enjoy it, and unfortunately our lives and the busyness of those lives take us away from it too often. To you, Michael, and to all of our listeners, thank you so much for your patience, particularly through 6A, our most delayed inconsistent season.
Mm-hmm.
We will do better for 6B. We are aware of it. Thank you.
Right. I also want to thank the audience, and I really want to thank Chris and Lily and Sal for giving up his parents, who do a lot of work. They all are very busy, and it's not only the work of recording the podcast and everything, but producing it and getting it ready. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
No, of course. And it's all because, so many of these emails were so positive today, because that's just what we've been getting lately is all of these positive messages. It's really wonderful. Life is challenging, man. There's a lot of wacky shit going on in the world. And just to put a button on the listener mail segment, it really makes my day. Not only to hear your insights and thoughts on this show that we all love and share with each other, makes it much more of a communal artistic experience, but it really feels good to know that we're making people's days easier, their commutes, their workouts, that they can just tune in and listen and feel like they're sitting at our table with us. That's the idea. So thank you all so much for those kind emails and all the insights and thoughts and laughter. With that, it's time for a top three.
Top three.
Top three moments. Top three moments. Mr. Jordan, you want to kick this one off?
Absolutely. I have 3 honorable mentions that are pretty major honorable mentions, so I think there might be some overlap with other people's big moments. But this traditionally has been a category where we had the least overlap, so let's take a look. Honorable moment number 1. These are mostly sad, I'm sorry. Would be Johnny Sack's tears as he is arrested at the end of Daughter Allegra's wedding. Next honorable mention, the murder of Fat Dom Gaviello in the back of Satriali's in Cold Stones. Last honorable mention, which you think would be in the numbers, but it's not, just Junior shoots Tony. Members only. My number 3, Tony versus Perry Muscles Marinara in Mr. and Mrs. John Sacramone Requests.
Nice.
My number 3 moment, Paulie comes home to mom. End of the ride.
Yeah.
Flashback of Chris telling Tony about Adriana.
3 quick honorable mentions.
You
1,
guys are out of control.
Junior shoots Tony. Number 2, Carmela and Rosalie in the cemetery in Cold Stones. Everything gets washed away. Last honorable mention, Artie Bucco shoots a rabbit in the throat, grabs the rabbit by the ears, and taunts its dead body, motherfucker. Number 3 moment, Tony visits Phil in the hospital, Kaisha.
My number 2, Tony and AJ fight outside the police station after Tony springs him from the joint in Johnny Cakes.
Number 2, the wine heist into the flashback. So we can talk about that on yours, because the flashback of Adriana is in that whole sequence leading up to it.
My number 2 is also Tony and AJ in the police parking lot.
My number 2, Tony and AJ by the car in Johnny Cakes.
Wow.
Whoa.
My number 1 moment, and this has haunted me for years. This is Tony as Kevin Finnerty with the briefcase he refuses to give over at the Inn at the Oaks, meeting with the maitre d', Steve Buscemi, in Mayhem.
My number 1 moment, I wrote it simply as, you have to let go.
Oh, wow!
The suitcase
The same one.
at the Inn at the Oaks. Unforgettable.
My number 1, Paulie and Nucci watching TV.
My number 1 is from the ride. It is not the robbery. It is not what comes after. It is the reference to it. When Kelly says, "You were right about the wine, Tony. Delicious." And Tony says, "I've been thinking lately, it's lost some of its, I don't know, pop." So that's my number 1 moment from this season, is when that moment fades.
Wow.
Wow. No, some nice overlap, actually.
Yeah. Some cool overlap. Like Jordan and Lily and I had the same number 2.
Yeah. Well, I think I had a unique number 3, so I just want to mention the Tony versus Perry fight. I guess I'll start there. And we had talked about this moment previously, so I won't dwell on it too long. But I just thought, it's such an incredible moment because Tony realizes, oh, geez, look at how New York is looking at Johnny Sack now that he's shown some weakness. Johnny Sack is also, his health is declining as well. Tony is in no fit physical condition to be doing basically anything more than taking a long walk at this point. He's going to take on a bodybuilder, he sucker punches him, beats the shit out of him, and then throws up in the bathroom. Kind of an unforgettable moment, one that has resonated with me for years afterward. Also, as sad and as curiously as this, I don't know, actual literal toxic masculinity, I don't know, but it's also a really cool moment. It is cool. And you know what? Perry ends up fine. So.
Yeah. It's a really well done scene.
Yeah.
Agreed.
My number 3 moment is Paulie comes home to mom at the end of the ride, which is Lily's number 1. So I'm going to wait to talk about it until we get to that, because it's more impactful for Lily. So go ahead. Your
My number 3?
Yep.
Well, mine's the flashback of Chris telling Tony about Adriana. Which is your
Number 2.
Number 2.
So go ahead and talk about it.
Yeah, I just think it's a really pivotal moment. I think it's really interesting that it didn't happen in long-term parking, that they waited for it. I like that they waited for it because it provides us an even deeper insight as to where Chris is actually with Tony, especially after was it the second episode, join the club, or maybe it's Mayhem when he plays the Adriana card.
Yeah, it's 3 after he wakes up from the coma but can't talk.
Yeah, and so we know it just provides an additional layer that I think is really beautiful. And I might have talked about it already, but Drea DiMatteo has mentioned in interviews that she begged for that to not be in the episode.
Yeah.
We don't know if that was because of her or not, but she really, really did not want that in long-term parking.
Well, it shows incredible discipline on the part of the editors because it's such a good scene.
Oh, yeah.
To cut a good scene like that really takes discipline and commitment to your story. I agree.
My number 3 is in Kaisha when Tony goes to visit Phil. I think what I love about that scene is just that all the emotions in it are real, but as Jordan pointed out when we recorded, everything remains ominous simply because of the mood and the vibe and Butchie still being there. So it seems to close certain doors and open up other ones, or leave things up in the air in this powerful way.
Yeah. My number 2 people, a few of us seem to all have this in common, so we could discuss this. Tony and AJ outside the police station in Johnny Cakes. It's one of our big AJ moments this season. It's a really good acting moment between Gandolfini and Ayler. And it brings AJ back into focus. He's made this really embarrassing attempt to do something to Uncle Junior, and it just reminds me this young man is just totally in free fall. That this is like, I don't want to elevate it beyond, but it is kind of like this big thing that is just never addressed. It's like, how long can we wait before somebody actually figures out the AJ situation? Because it's like hitting critical and no one really does anything. He just kind of keeps getting yelled at and shoved around. Eventually what happens,
Yeah. I mean, I think it's beautifully acted.
Yes.
I think we're finally seeing a little consequence to AJ declining, disintegrating, whatever word you want to use. Yeah, it's just, it's a really striking moment. And what's interesting is David Chase was recently on Robert Eiler and Jamie Lynn Sigler's podcast, Not Today, Pal.
Yeah.
Which in general is a very enjoyable,
it's a lot of fun,
hilarious podcast. But Robert Eiler at one point said, I think I had one good scene in all of the entirety of The Sopranos, and asked David Chase, which one do you think it is? And he guessed this moment. And Robert Eiler said, that's it. A lot of times people will come up with scenes I won't talk about because they will include spoilers. And yeah, David Chase knew right away which one it was. It was just a really interesting moment between them, and hearing... Yeah, Robert Eiler doesn't have very nice things to say about himself in the show, which I think is very interesting, because I think he's quite good in it.
You're excellent, Rob. If you got any chance in hell you hear this.
No way. I don't know that he's ever watched the show, based on what he says in the podcast, but I just thought that was really interesting that David Chase immediately knew the answer. It's a testament to how good the scene is.
Yeah, it's a very powerful scene. I like that it's not... There's something to it, but it's not sentimental. I think when they did one take, Gandolfini actually hugged the kid, and it was a powerful emotional moment, but it's that's not what we need. What we need is, dude, The Sopranos is so good at this. It's so emotional. Then at the end, it's kind of funny, because the kid can't even puke right at the end. He's just dry heaving it, and Tony's just get in the car. Yeah, it's great. It's profound. It's funny. It's weird. It's a bit unsettling, though, I think, too, because of what Jordan mentioned. That it's this is not solved. We put a Band-Aid over it again. Mm-hmm. So...
Right. Yeah, and the larger question of, we've raised someone that would do this. What do we do with him? And then also, what if he had succeeded? It's just bad either way.
There was no way he succeeded.
Of course.
Well, no, but I like it. I like the idea that, they've been kind of kicking the can down the road with AJ for a while, and Jordan's used the word critical mass. That's what it feels like. Mm-hmm. My number 2 was... the wine heist into the flashback, which we discussed already. So,
my number 1 is...
No, your number 2? Did you have a number 2?
Yeah, it was Tony and AJ.
Oh, okay. Was your number 2, Paul?
We all had the same.
Oh, we all
one.
the same. That's right. Okay. So, Jordan, you were kicking us off this round. What's your number 1?
My number 1 was...
the briefcase.
Yeah, the briefcase.
Yes.
This is Kevin Finnerty, the Inn at the Oaks, kind of the
And
final...
I have the same number 1 moment. It's unforgettable.
It's unforgettable. It's beautiful. In many ways, it's kind of like the climax of the afterlife experience, right? Symbolically, I suppose, though other interpretations are valid. Your life is in this briefcase. Are you ready to give this over? Are we done? Is the simulation done? Are you ready to pass over into whatever is going to be behind the veil? But we hear Meadow's voice in the trees. There's something calling you back. I've been fascinated by the Inn at the Oaks ever since I saw this episode. This was a rare 6A episode that I had seen at the time, and I've always just kind of I've dreamt about the Inn at the Oaks. Me, Jordan, me personally, I've thought about being there and it being this gatehouse to the afterlife. It's really profound. They tap into something that's really profound in the subconscious with that piece.
And what a genius choice to have Buscemi as that maitre d', the last one to pass. He's not in the house. He's greeting you at the door. He was the last one to arrive there.
Right, and also so important because that's the other Tony. Also, it's playing on that duality one final time. I'm here already, now it's your turn. And I'm not myself, and you're not really yourself either.
You said it so beautifully, Jordan. In addition to the truly deep and eerie, haunting nature of that scene and how well it's written and acted, and the terror on Gandolfini's face and the conflict there, which is all interesting in and of itself. Add to that the way that they do him coming out of the coma, the flash of white, the heartbeat, his machine going batshit, Paulie, the voice through the wall, the rain on the way there. They just build it all so well. It's so well put together, so well edited, so well constructed. It really is a tense moment of television. I remember watching that with a group of friends, not knowing, because it's the first time you're watching it, if Tony's going to fucking fall out here and the rest of the season is going to be without Tony. And he just opens his eyes and wow, I mean, it's such a moment. But
yeah, there's also a marriage of some of our other popular symbols from the show. There are trees, obviously. It's the inn at the Oaks. There's wind, right? There's some shadowy figures in the house. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Number one.
Yeah, Paulie and Nucci watching TV. I mean,
yes.
I think I have not been shy about my love for Nucci in this television program, and I just think it's just so simply sweet. A boy comes home to his mom, and they just share this real. I don't want to fight. Or what's the exact line? You know it.
I don't want to, Paulie. I don't want to argue.
There you go.
You want some cookies?
Yeah, it's just I could just listen to an entire show of her saying "cookie" over and over again. Cookie. And it's just beautiful. It's just sweet. She's exactly what he needs. I think that there is a little justification of his anger toward her. I get it. It breaks my heart because she's just so sweet and did something really great. It's just what he went through was a big shock. I don't know how I would take that, And it's just something so wholesome in a show that is not.
Agreed.
Well said. My moment is from the ride, particularly the moment where the moment fades. I guess because that's what that episode is about to me. About ennui and growing boredom and just trying to fill your life with things, particularly because you don't want to slow down and actually reflect, I guess, on what you've done and the breakdown, the disintegration in your life and your culture and your relationships. That's why that episode is so profound to me, I think, because it's fun but also very dark, very bleak in a lot of ways. So what that part communicates to me has always stayed with me.
I agree. In many ways, it's an allegory for the entire season. All right, that was moments. Let's get a couple other conversations done here. First of all, let's talk for a second about. Well, we're going to get to that. Let's talk briefly about therapy this season. It's been a mainstay of the show. The very first scene of The Sopranos itself is Tony going into Melfi's office, being in that outer office and coming in and therapy. They've been on quite a wild ride, some ups, some downs. She doesn't see him anymore. Then she's seeing him again. Season 2, she was afraid of him. It was utterly unproductive. Season 3 felt like we were getting somewhere, and then Tony tapered off into despair. In season 4, Tony became bored, cut it off, tried to see her romantically. It's been an experience, and it feels, at least in the first episode, a little bit like therapy by rote. He's talking about his therapist, about something that anybody would talk to their therapist about, dealing with an elderly relative who's losing their cognition. And then he gets shot. And it's holy shit. And what's interesting is I think the viewer, at least I was at the time, was thinking, if Tony wakes up from this, these Melfi scenes are going to be fire, really good. But The Sopranos does something very interesting. Tony won't fucking deal with it. The thing he most needs to deal with is the thing he's avoiding at all costs. She says to him, "You were shot, Anthony, by a member of your own family." And he sees each day as a gift, and rather than using that gift to understand the trauma he went through, he's using that as an excuse for avoidance. And I don't know how you feel. I feel like the therapy relationship is disintegrating because of it. Melfi even uses, I think, a very key scene for how Melfi sees this, how this is all going is He refuses to engage with the trauma about the uncle, and it's just a matter of time before he completely decompensates, is what she says to Dr. Elliot, which I think is a very crucial line in the development of Melfi. How do we feel about therapy in season 6A and how it's going?
It doesn't do much in this season. There are basically 3 things that are discussed in therapy, none of them very productively. It does still provide a nice space where Tony can speak some thoughts out loud, but it's a lot of things I feel like the viewer already kind of feels. The first thing is that he doesn't want to engage with the trauma he has suffered from being shot by his uncle. So we don't really get further insight on it, period. That's it. There's nothing else to say about it. I can't offer anything else because they don't say anything else.
Yeah.
The second thing is he comes out of the coma with a new positive philosophy on life, literally a new lease on life. And then as we both see outside of therapy and in therapy, as he discusses it, it kind of goes back to a place of boredom and then even back into like kind of a sour place that is a decomposing kind of place. And then the big one for me, which resonated, I hate my son. I hate my son was a big therapy moment.
Yeah.
He's doing less exploring. I think he's still learning. I don't know that the therapy is actually doing anything therapeutic for him in this season. That's not a failure on the part of the writing. I don't know what Melfi is trying to do anymore. I think that's a problem. I don't think she knows what to do. This is not a great patient for her. I think early seasons she thought of this as like, wow, this is exciting. He excited her.
Yeah.
Right? This was someone I can really work with. He has such deep trauma. These are things I could bring him to realize. And it's almost like his the cycle he's gone through with his new lease on life. It's the same thing with the cycle in therapy. It's just like, oh, therapy, another boring thing that I could be bored about.
The scenes are pretty brief.
Yeah.
Mostly. And I feel like that might reflect Tony's engagement with it. Not wanting to go too deep. Or frustrated in how deep he goes. He seems to be angry with himself when he says, I hate my son. Which is understandable, but he can't seem to break out of this weird cycle where he's either putting bad stuff out there or shitting back on himself. And it seems to keep just going around. Circle jerk of life. And I would, something in me almost wants to say that I don't think the writing is too good, but you notice that they reflect back on it at the end. Tony said the last thing he says in therapy in 6A is, this doesn't go anywhere. I just come here to hang out. So
nothing really changes with the therapy part.
Yeah, I think something is deliberate in what's getting stalled out. As Jordan said, he just won't engage with this stuff. And I think, Melfi is getting kind of frustrated. The therapy is still there, and it's still, I think, providing some of that functionary. I heard one person refer to it as a Greek chorus on the show. And it still is doing that baseline thing. But I think you're starting to see some things pull back with it or get more difficult in how it's stalled out or plateauing, and we see some of that with Melfi. I'd also say, just as a corollary to that, because Melfi's scaled back, Meadow leaves New Jersey, Carmela, after the initial pump with everything, sort of falls back a bit. This season, to me, ends up, I'm not saying this is a criticism, it ends up a bit of a sausage fest. Like, it's a lot of stuff with the guys, I think. Or that's at least...
Is that a veto joke, Paul?
You know what? I regretted it the second it came out of my mouth. Oh, I regret that part too. I don't know, a lot of guy-heavy stuff. I'm not saying that as a criticism necessarily. I just noticed, for me anyway, that was most of the stuff that resonated with me. It's going to happen when we go over characters too.
Well, I agree wholeheartedly with everything you said. If one of the major dramatic questions of The Sopranos from minute one is, can this therapist fix this guy or help this guy? With 9 episodes left, something major has to happen here, or shit or get off the pot, because it's not feeling like it. But we still have 9 episodes to go, and they're going to be eventful. So, but right now, it's. Can she help this guy is feeling like a bleak enterprise. One of his best therapy scenes, I think, comes when he's talking about Janice as well. I thought that was also some good stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk briefly about Bobby and Janice before we do our next top 3. Interesting season. I thought this was possibly the most positive turn their relationship could have taken in an odd odd way. I mean, there's definitely still contention there. Janice is right. Tony does take any opportunity to shit on Bobby because of his position with her, but he buys her the house. She's overwhelmed with joy. This kindness, this act of kindness for his sister. What do we think about Janice this season? I thought Janice had a good season, and Bobby certainly has elevated his status in Tony's eyes over the course of the season. What do we think of this, Bobby and Janice, and the relationship? I think their big episode was Mo and Joe. Any thoughts on Janice at all?
I'll go first. The season has gone well for Janice ultimately because she gets what she wants, right? Her status is improved within the family, both uppercase F and lowercase f. She gets a much nicer house. Her husband is, moderately more respected within the operation. I don't know if things are going well for Janice in the long run. She still strikes me, she's a very broken, very unhappy person who I don't think is getting better, but it's the best we've seen her situation. So I guess good enough for now. I often feel like Janice is cursed in the same way that Tony is cursed. Someone who just they can just never be happy. It's Livia forever.
Yeah.
And no matter what man she gets involved with, she either ruins her own life or she ruins the man's life or both.
Yep.
I think being a mother again is a good thing, but I'm also terrified for people that have her as a mom.
Well, here's the thing. It's good for her, probably, because it gives her something to do and something to she's not shooting Bobby in her kitchen and having Tony haul the body out. But I don't know that it's great for those kids. Holy shit. Bobby Jr. is going to have a couple
From what we've seen, she's a terrible
decapitated
stepmother.
heads in his freezer in a few years.
Yeah. I don't think I have anything else there, really, to be honest with you.
All right.
I love Janice, but she still bothers me a lot.
Oh, no, she's a very
Definitely
troubling character.
One of the things that's great about Season 6, in addition to dealing with some new characters that have been more background over the course of the show, is they do new stuff with old characters. We see stuff... We've known Chris and Paulie from the beginning, but we do stuff with them that we've never seen before. And extraordinarily, I think we really do get some new stuff from Janice and Bobby, having to reckon with how... Not that Bobby's kind of a goofy character or Janice is an annoying character, those things are still there, but how Tony treats them unfairly. That comes up, and it's interesting. It's a different kind of story in Mo and Joe. So I liked seeing that. I think, like Jordan, I end up still with a very eerie feeling out of all of it.
Yeah.
But I do think that's one of the things that works so well about 6A. Either new characters altogether or old characters, new directions, new stories. Unexpected.
I think it's time for another top three!
Top three.
Top three. Fuck your all. All right, I'll kick this one off. I have two honorable mentions.
What's the category?
Oh! Characters/performances.
Cool.
This is both the character, their impact on you in the season, and their performances. Obviously, our one rule, which I will reiterate, we are excluding Tony Soprano and James Gandolfini because...
He's not very good. He's not a good actor.
No, it's just, it wouldn't be fair.
Just
He
not
occupies
strong.
he occupies so much of the gravity of the show, it would be impossible not to have him on every year's list. So this is character/performances minus Tony/James Gandolfini. My honorable mentions are two. First of all, for honorable mention, Vince Curatola as Johnny Sack.
Nice.
Thought he had a great season. And honorable mention, Robert Funaro, Eugene Pontecorvo. I loved that performance in that first episode in Members Only. But my number 3 performance of the year, first time this performance has made my top 3 list, and I think it's very justified, Tony Sirico, Paulie Walnuts. That guy had a season.
My number 3 is Artie Bucco.
Nice.
John Ventimiglia, very nice.
2 honorable mentions.
You all are out of control with these.
I am out of control. Edie Falco as Carmela Soprano, Robert Funaro as Gene Pontecorvo. Number 3, this actor character has never made a list for me before. Robert Eiler, AJ Soprano.
Honorable mention, Hal Holbrook as Schwinn. Fleshy part of the thigh, probably one of my favorite one-offs. Yes. Honorable mention, Robert Finaro, Gene Pontecorvo. My number 3 is also Artie Bucco.
Wow, very nice.
This is awesome already.
My number 2, Michael Imperioli, Christopher.
My number 2 is Edie Falco as Carmela.
Number 2, Tony Sirico, Polly Walnuts.
Nice.
Number 2, Edie Falco, Carmela.
Number 1, Edie Falco, Carmela.
Number 1, Christopher Moltisanti.
Number 1, Christopher Moltisanti.
Number 1, Christopher Moltisanti.
Jordan, we had the exact same list.
Wow.
Twinsies.
So your guys' list was Artie Bucco, Carmela, and Christopher.
Yes.
In the exact same order.
I had Carmela and Christopher, but swapped 1 and 2. I have Carmela as my number 1 and Christopher as my number 2. And Paulie and I both share Tony Sirico, just in different spots on our list as well. And you had AJ.
Someone has Paul, you have a totally unique Robert Eiler.
Start with Robert Eiler. I mean, we've talked at length already about AJ, but give it why did he get this spot on your list? Not that I disagree, but
No, he's great.
Yeah, I think starting with Join the Club and what he's doing there, as well as in Mayhem, and certainly the last couple episodes, but I think mainly Johnny Cakes and what he's doing a lot. One of the, I think I mentioned this when we did it, but him doing everything to not go try to do the murder. Like him staying in bed until noon and just laying on the couch in his boxers watching TV. Like, this is fucking awesome, dude. And then that scene with Gandolfini. I was so proud of him, particularly where he started on the show.
he has a much heavier load this season too, doesn't he? He has a lot more things to explore.
Yep, bigger than Meadow.
Much.
Pulls back a bit.
Meadow had a very light season.
Yeah. Not that she doesn't have great stuff too, but it was so much more powerful and heavy. And as Jordan mentioned with the stuff in therapy, like I Hate My Son, it carried this weight.
Yeah.
And it was a lot for him to work with, and I thought he did a great job.
Well said. Let's talk about Artie Bucco, your number 3.
Sure. Yeah, please.
We've talked about Luxury Lounge, I feel like, quite a bit this retrospective. I think he's had I think he has a really great season. I think his work in Luxury Lounge is really outstanding, and he's just so lovable, and I think what he represents on the show is really important. And I don't want to overstate, because I already made that point.
Yeah. Listen, I'm a sucker for the working man makes good storyline. I like seeing the little guy win one over the mobster. Sorry, I just do. And I like Tony's scenes with Artie, because it's the only time we see that version of Tony, which is a little outside the mob. He's a little gentler. He's a little bit more like someone I would be friends with. Like, it's nice in those moments too. I've rarely liked Charmaine as much as I do in that episode, as reflected off Artie as well. I just love that episode. I love how it ends. I think it's very, very sweet. And you need that. You know, it has to, something has to be that, you know. And he's a great actor.
He is. John Ventimiglia is really
You know,
good.
and he could have played any other role, too. I think he gives him so much dignity.
It's funny you said that. One of the other parts of the David Chase interview with Robert Eiler and Jamie Lynn Sigler that was really interesting. They recorded the episode the day after the premiere of the David Chase documentary, so that was a bit of a topic of conversation. And Robert Eiler mentioned he would watch a documentary just on the auditions, and they were kind of picking David Chase's brain about like how much he remembered of the auditions. And he didn't even remember Jamie Lynn Sigler auditioning. She goes, I auditioned quite a bit. I read with John Ventimiglia as Tony. And David Chase talked about how John Ventimiglia read for every part. He really wanted in with the crew, the guys, and there just wasn't really a part for him, but they found him as Artie, which I thought was so perfect. And David Chase mentioned that one of his favorite lines in the series is the Martina goes down easy line that Matt Weiner wrote. So it was just really interesting that came up too.
Yeah.
But to your point, he could have played anything.
Just a great actor.
Yeah.
Great face.
Yes.
All right, and my number three, which is your number two, is Paulie. So let's talk about Tony Sirico and Paulie here. Again, much like Robert Eiler, this is a character who's been with us from the jump, but has some very new territory. It's very easy. I feel like if I were to write any spec script on The Sopranos as a writer, Paulie might be one of the easiest characters to just have around in some scenes. Mm-hmm. Throw in the funniest thing, the has, Paulie. But again, they give him some range to play with. This stuff with his mother, Paulie just has an above and beyond season from the get-go. His shit with Vito, the stuff that happens when Tony is in a coma versus when he's out of it, his pettiness, his selfishness, and he's just really put to the test and taken to some new places. Paulie crying. I don't know how you felt, Paul, but I mean, he's a standout this year, always, but particularly this year because they gave him a lot of new places to play.
Yeah, I think so. I think, as you guys have mentioned, in some instances, some really great moments, like him going to sit with Nucci and how well they work together, their chemistry. I don't know if this is the case, if they did it deliberately, but Tony Sirico, not a professional actor, I wondered if them giving him a lot of this new stuff, he felt a bit nervous about it. Mm. And isn't it a great thing that a lot of his scenes discussing emotional things are with Gandolfini? Mm-hmm. And they'll sit down, and I bet as an actor he felt very safe and taken care of in those scenes. And those are some great scenes. When they're in the hospital, you're part of something bigger. When they're in the bathroom at Vesuvio, and Paulie even gets a little out of sorts with Tony and then has to calm down. There's something, they're funny scenes for sure, but they're very human. And it really pushed Paulie to some unexpected places. Yeah, I thought. So I wanted to give him the shout out, and Tony Sirico really went there.
Yeah, he did. Let's talk about who did you have as your number two? That was Paulie, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I had Michael Imperioli as Christopher as my number two. He was several of your number ones.
I think it was all of our number ones.
All except me, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Carmela was your number one.
Carmela was my number one, and y'all number two. So let's talk about Carmela.
Yep.
Who got the majority number two vote, and Chris last, who got the majority number one. Mm-hmm. So Carmela, Edie Falco, powerhouse actress, always
Queen.
I thought her journey was fascinating. A little top heavy, a lot of her more haggard and trying, challenging moments as an actress probably came in the first half, but the melancholy philosophic bit is every bit as interesting to me, and I think she had a hell of a year. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a nice blend because, listen, she has all the really raw, crazy emotional stuff early when she thinks she's going to lose Tony. That's some of her best acting in the series. It's amazing. But I equally enjoy the Cold Stones episode stuff is great. Anything she's struggling with otherwise is good. It's easy to like Edie Falco because her emotional expression is just so real. And it feels like there's very little artifice, and the character doesn't hide much from us, from the audience. She's a great conduit, really, for anything that's going on in the text. Loved her in the season. Edie Falco, I think, looking back, has, I think, made almost all of my top threes, because she's just sort of undeniable. Yeah,
1,000%.
Yeah.
Edie Falco's a queen. What I love about her is she's able to be such a stereotypical Jersey woman and still so nuanced. It's so easy to overblow the Jersey thing, and she just has this knack of still being a real human being while doing it. And it's just like, you look at the hair, you look at how she's dressed, it would just be so easy to go full like Sheila Broflovsky. Yeah. And she doesn't. She's so human, especially the philosophical pieces. And I'm a huge fan. I feel like we say this every season. Like, she probably could also be left off of our list the way Tony is too, but here she is on all my lists. So.
All right, and lastly, Christopher, Michael Imperioli. He made your number one spots. I can't say, it would be quibbling to argue for him as number two versus number one, but we all seem to be in some agreement that he was at least one of the best of the year. Monumental work.
Yes.
And also, again, I'm going to iterate, new territory, new challenge for him. He's always had, and by him I mean Michael and Christopher, has always had Adriana there to play off of. And so he's in a much different place. He's got those rain car scenes with Corky Iannucci. He's still struggling with his addiction, his relationship with Tony, this feeling of the sacrifice he's made, his venture into show business. I mean, he's really doing it all.
Chris gets to do it all in this season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They dropped the shock wife kid thing on him too, and I just love the lack of fanfare around it. It's like everything he wanted with Adriana to get married, have a kid, whatever, and it just happens like that with this woman that he barely knows, and that's not what's impacting him. That's not what's important to him. It's there. It's window dressing. But Chris is stepping up in the mob world, but by the end of the season, he's in rough shape with Tony. That we want to talk about disintegration. Look no further than this relationship through the course of the season. And it started, obviously, at the end of 5. That Adriana thing is coming home to roost. It's just that was the crack in the foundation, and we're witnessing that crack becoming a chasm.
Yeah. I think one of the most interesting things about Christopher is that on a mob show, the only thing he's good at is being a mobster. And because that's secure, that is the thing that's completely sidelined about his character when we emphasize anything about it. Just like, it is assumed that Chris is capable of doing his job. Let's not talk about that basically ever. We're going to focus on all the things he fucks up with, okay? Anything in his relationships, anything relating to his addiction, anything relating into his aspirations towards show business, anything relating to romance, and, anything like that. So, we only focus in the scripts on this character's flaws. We never really spend an episode where, like, this guy's an efficient captain who runs his crews well, and Tony has faith in him to, like, take over one day, basically. No, we only focus on the bad parts of this character, the struggles. And he's really terrible at pretty much everything else. Listen, no judgment in general for recovering addicts, but he's, like, the worst AA member ever. He has completely destroyed this poor young woman, Kelly's life, by roping her into this loveless marriage with a child on the way that he wants no part of any of that. He is someone that is, and this has been all the way since back in A Hit is a Hit, he is someone that is uniquely unaware of how sort of untalented he is in terms of his ability to conceptualize a script, follow through, make connections in Hollywood, anything like that. And then the entire Juliana Skiff situation, also bad, and all of those things erode his relationship with Tony. And he's played it so well. What is the big question mark block, right? Why is this also exacerbated this season? He's lost his North Star. There's no Adriana to keep any of this stuff in check anymore. This guy's off the rails.
Well said.
Yeah. And, just we'll close out this discussion with this unless someone else has something to add, but Chris has always represented the future of the family. And considering we're getting into our final 9 here, and we're describing his relationship with Tony as a disintegration, is not good. Not good for anybody on the show, not good for the future of the family. And, you have to imagine that this relationship is going to be a key factor in the episodes to come. I'm excited to see where it goes and to discuss it with you all. But this has been an interesting journey with Chris as a character who brushes up against all kinds of interesting things, and he had a hell of a journey this year.
Mm-hmm. Incredible performance. Chris has eluded the top spot in my favorite characters list, even though he's been in there or an honorable mention in just about every season. Mm-hmm. I think it was the newness of everything that he was dealing with, and I don't know, this dark but wonderful surprise at the end of 6A that it seems to me like, as it turns out, not only not a real reliable heir apparent, as Chris himself would say, but perhaps Chris is like one of Tony's major problems now. Mm. I don't know, but that it gives me that eerie sense, as Jordan mentioned, that all of these different things erode his relationship with Tony, which is his most important relationship on the show.
Amen to that.
Because all of those things he's bad at are getting in the way of the one thing he's good at.
Mm. That's a good point. It's distracting him. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when I come up with our run sheet for these retrospectives, I come up with certain subjects that I want to hit. And if they come up during our top threes, I can chuck them off, and then I'll bring them up otherwise. So there's two things I just want to talk about briefly before we go into our final top three and close this out. These are more, I think, going to be quicker touchdown conversations, but they're worth discussing. One, I want to talk about Silvio. He had a fun moment this season in Mayhem where he got to really sort of test out the boss seat for a little while. And as he himself admitted, maybe not suited for the number one spot, as reliable and loyal as he is to Tony. This is not a guy who did well with his short time having to make the calls.
No, very bad.
Hospitalized, can't breathe. He gave it a shot, but Sil is steadfast for Tony, and I think he had a great moment when he was de facto boss while Tony was in the coma, where he went in and just kind of grabbed Tony's hand. I want to put a pin in that. I mean, this is a guy who was, loyal to the end, it feels like, and I have no reason to believe otherwise at this point going into the final 9. Any last thoughts on Silvio before we move on?
I think only just that it really it really seems that Tony is the only one that can do Tony's job, which should make us all afraid for the future. Silvio's a great character. I think we've seen more of him, since he killed Adriana. We're aware this character has multiple facets, but being a great leader is not one.
Yeah. Silvio is a great consigliere. He's a great second. If Tony were to ever die within a month, the DeMeo family would be a satellite of the Sack family.
Yeah. Great segue, because the last thing I want to talk about is there's a big transition over in the New York side of things this season. Johnny pleads guilty, and we're left with Phil Leotardo. And we saw how that started in season 5. My brother Billy.
Whatever happened there?
Whatever happened there?
God rest his soul, huh?
Whatever happened there? Phil is a hell of a character. He was up Tony's ass the entire season about Vito. He's got a chip on his shoulder about Tony. The lid on Phil, Tony uses Tony's words. He keeps a lid on Phil. Johnny Sack is out of the picture. So things really ramp up after Johnny Sack is taken out of the picture and Phil is the de facto boss of New York. But he has this fortuitous heart attack in Kaisha, and Tony gets a chance to talk to him. But we talked about this when we covered Kaisha. We saw what was right outside that door, Butchie and those other guys who are not having it. And
and also in that episode we met Phil's bulldog.
Correct.
Butchie, right?
Yeah. So I think the consensus when we covered Kaisha was that beautiful words for that room, but Phil's tears and any truce made is probably never going to leave the walls of that hospital. Any thoughts on New York situation, Phil Leotardo, and the succession to the Sacramone throne here?
Well, unlike Sil with Tony, Phil might be better suited for the number 1 position than Johnny Sack. And so we're looking at a very different dynamic with where New York is going versus where New Jersey's going.
Controversial. Phil might be a better boss than Tony. Period. He's less compassionate and probably less thoughtful, but I think that's probably good for the operation of an organized crime family.
Yeah.
We're at a disadvantage when we watch this show because to us, Soprano Land is the world of the mob, right? But from the New York perspective, they're just this pygmy thing over there, right? The Soprano family, even with all of the captains included, the entire extended family, it's nothing compared to what New York has. Phil's operation is much, much larger. Soprano thing is outsized because Carmine Sr. and Johnny Sack gave it a certain level of respect, right? That maybe it didn't deserve. Or maybe it deserved in the old days and not anymore.
Yeah.
Right? And now Phil is kind of like the balancing agent, the thing that's here to set that to rights. That thing was elevated over there. It never should have been. They've wronged me. Get rid of it.
Yeah.
Right? Sounds like consolidation of power. Sounds like the first thing a guy like that would do. he's a great foil for Tony, right? Old world gangster versus new world gangster. Guy that's uncompromising versus someone who is compromising, right? Guy who runs a big operation, guy who runs a small operation. It's really it's a cool it's a cool
Guy who
thing.
went to jail for 20 years. Guy who seems to have a horseshoe up his ass.
Right.
When it comes to this, so far, knock wood, this life coming to get you.
Yeah. These guys have a hard time seeing eye to eye. There is, as you said, that brief, beautiful moment of reconciliation, it seems, between them in the hospital, but it's too ominous to stick. I like that both these guys have spent some time in a hospital bed this season, right? But they kind of are both going to come out of these experiences, it seems, still wanting to fight each other. It's cool. He's a great villain. I think he helps me to see sometimes that Tony makes some really bad decisions. We know why he makes them.
Yeah.
But it was, everything from Tony B to Vito to, it's been not great.
Well said. And with that, it is time for our final top 3.
Top 3 episodes.
Top three.
Gonna wake up Sal. Sorry. Okay. There we go. Did he move? Okay, great. Top 3 episodes. I am very curious to see where this ends up. Who wants to start?
I'll start.
Paul, kick us off. Top 3 episodes.
I have 2 honorable mentions, Lily.
You fuck.
I'm out of control with these. All right, let's see what happens. 2 honorable mentions: Mr. and Mrs. John Sacrimony Request and Luxury Lounge. Number 3, Join the Club.
Honorable mention, Join the Club. Honorable mention, Kaisha. My number 3 is Cold Stones.
Yeah, dude.
Number 3, Mayhem.
My number 3 is members only.
Okay. Let's see how this is going.
Number 2, Fleshy Part of the Thigh.
Number 2, The Ride.
Number 2, The Ride.
Number 2, Luxury Lounge.
Number 1, The Ride.
Number 1, Members Only.
Number 1, The Fleshy Part of the Thigh.
Number 1, The Ride.
Okay, so
Hell yeah.
less of a spread than we think, because actually I think we're all parked on the same 5 episodes.
Yeah.
Right, is that correct?
I think so.
So in the conversation we have, and we're only discussing 1, 2, 3, not the honorable mentions. Right?
Yeah.
But
I
there's
mean,
some
my
overlap
honorable
there, yeah.
mentions were Kaisha and all the other episodes.
Okay, right. So the only ones in the conversation, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, are we're going to talk about, because they were mentioned 1, 2, or 3 for each of us, Cold Stones, The Ride, Members Only, Fleshy Part of the Thigh, Luxury Lounge, and
Mayhem.
Mayhem.
I had Mayhem on
Did I miss one?
Oh, no episodes where Vito's emphasized. Sad.
True.
Cold Stones.
I have Cold Stones.
Yeah.
So where he gets whacked, yeah.
I'll start with Cold Stones just because I think I'm the only one that has it on the top.
Yeah, and then I'll do Mayhem because it was my number 3
Okay,
and no one else
so
said it.
Cold Stones kind of has 2 halves to it, right? Cold Stones is the end of the Vito storyline, and Cold Stones is also Carmela's trip to Paris, is all that one episode, right? I thought it brought a satisfying end to a storyline that hadn't always been satisfying, and I thought the coda on it was significant and poignant and made me remember the story perhaps a little bit more fondly than it was executed, because I feel bad for Vito, but I also find Phil feeling bad for Vito's final moment interesting.
Yes.
There's something there that, like, sparkles darkly. I don't know. Something's there. Also, Carmela becoming philosophical and existential in the way that has pretty much only been reserved for Tony and occasionally Christopher so far is something very meaningful for me. So I think Cold Stones is great.
I agree with everything you said about that episode. Mayhem, we talked. I'm not going to go on at length about it because a big part of why I like Mayhem is actually the last 10 minutes, which was in my our conversation of moments in the suitcase and the Inn at the Oaks and the resolution of the Kevin Finnerty sequence and the balls it took to do that episode. But there's a lot of other good moments in the waking part of Mayhem. I like the scheming of the guys, the disintegration of the family in Tony's absence, Paulie and Vito with the comedy there and the score and I got a piss first, you want half of that too, and then withholding money from Carmela, hoping that Tony dies and then he doesn't, so they have to rush the money together, and then Carmela's therapy scene with Melfi after blowing up at AJ, and there's just so much to chew on there. Mayhem is absolute. It was fucking mayhem. Paulie's hilarious rant that almost kills Tony. It's just fantastic. It's everything that I love about these first parts of the first couple episodes of season 3 culminate in mayhem. Like the first beat ends there, so mayhem it is for me. What else was there?
I think a lot of us had the ride.
Ride was my
somewhere
number
around
2.
2 or 3.
Right,
And
was my
members
number
only
1.
showed up a couple
And
times.
number 1.
So it's Lily's number 1. Do we want to wait on it then?
Yes.
Okay.
My number 3 was Join the Club.
Oh, Join the Club. Let's talk about
It's an
that.
honorable mention for me. Let's talk about Join the Club.
Because it was your number 3.
Join the Club is not one of the episodes in this season or the show generally that I love to go back to. I had to give it a spot because of the guts it took to do it. To tell that story that way, to go there. It's mayhem is a whole different kind of brave and fun and wild and super entertaining. Join the Club is The Sopranos, I think, really going to another place in terms of the tone, and I appreciated it so much, even though to some degree I'd say I still struggle with it. I wanted to give the shout out for the bravery of doing it the way that they did.
It asks so much of the audience.
Yeah.
To go there. It's cool as hell. Yeah.
It is cool as hell. Well, so much is dumbed down for audiences, I feel like. I feel like so much doesn't trust the audience to get it, and I find myself being hammered over the head by a lot of stuff. I have no examples right now.
No, but it's true. A more regular show, in the waking world, someone would break that down with him.
Right.
Like Melfi, he'd be like, I was this guy, Kevin Finnerty, and blah, blah, blah. And she would talk about it. Yeah. And the audience would go, oh, that's what it was. But we don't do that, so we all just have to live with it.
And personally, I'm so comfortable in general not understanding what I'm watching and just feeling whatever I'm going to feel about it. You know, it's why I like absurdist theater so much, is I'm fine with not getting it or not knowing exactly what the author was thinking. I don't need to know. It's what was my experience, and I like being challenged that way. And I think Join the Club does that, despite it not being on my list, other than one of my 9 honorable mentions.
We had The Ride, Fleshy Part of the Thigh was my number 1, your number 2.
Yep.
Any other episodes outside of that? You
Members
had
only.
Members only. You were the only one who had members only.
No,
on
I
your
had
list.
members only as a 3.
As a 3,
and
and
Lux
your
Lounge
my
was 2.
1.
It's your 1. Okay, so talk about your Luxury Lounge is your number 2.
Yeah.
Talk about Luxury Lounge.
We talked a lot about Luxury Lounge
Yeah.
today, so there isn't a whole lot to add. It's just, it couldn't not be on my list. I think it's such a dark season, and Luxury Lounge is such a light, even though it deals with some pretty heavy, real topics for, like, the normal people in the world. Like, other things are heavy because it's the mob, and there's death and murder and things like that, but I think Luxury Lounge is just so relatable as a human being. And also, the Artie storyline is wonderful. Ben Kingsley, Lauren Bacall, come on. It's a fantastic, fantastic episode.
Amen. Fleshy Part of the Thigh. It was your number 2. Let's talk about it. It was my number 1.
Go ahead.
So, The Ride, which is going to come up in a moment because it was another person's number 1, is the thematic element of the idea that life is chipping away, and the boredom of life and the tedium of life and the shitty decisions you have to make just kind of drag you down and pull the thrill away. For episode 4, The Fleshy Part of the Thigh is the tee-up of that. Fleshy Part of the Thigh so eloquently articulates the big thematic elements that pervade the entire season. And really, what I love what it does dramatically, because as cynical as the show gets, as dark as the show gets, and it gets dark very quickly after this, this episode leaves you wondering for a moment, is this going to be it? Is this the thing that is really going to transform this guy? Are we going to see a new Tony? He rolls out feeling like every day is a gift. He lets the paramedic they were hosing down for that money off the hook. He has those excellent conversations with Hal Holbrook and the philosophy and the duality and the priest or the pastor rather, and Aaron Arkaway and Hesh and the environment of the hospital and Tony's journey of self-discovery. When he leaves the hospital, you almost buy that something is going to change. And the fact that they're able to so effectively set that up dramatically for what's coming is masterful. It's what they call in pro wrestling a hope spot. Your baby face, your good guy. Oh wow, it's looking like something's going to happen here. It's going to win, and then in typical Sopranos fashion, the hero's going to get slammed down. Except instead of a slam down, it's just a slow crumbling and a slow chipping away at that veneer that he's set up. But the layering of the philosophical elements of the entire season are most beautifully articulated in this episode, so that's why I picked it.
Yeah. That's why I love it too, and I think I love having Tony in a different space, low down physically, having him in the hospital, this excuse to meet these characters. Hal Holbrook's character we compared to Kurt Vonnegut, he kind of looks like him. Kurt Vonnegut had an uncle that apparently loved nothing more than sitting in the shade, drinking a lemonade, hanging out with the family, and he would say, if this isn't nice, what is? And Tony is trying to pursue that every day as a gift perspective in this episode. And yeah, I think you put it well, Chris, it's a hope spot. But everyday life gets you down from there on in.
Yeah. We have 2 episodes left to discuss. Members Only and
Members
The Ride.
Only and The Ride.
So we're going to take care of Members Only. This was my 1 and your
3.
3? Yeah?
Yeah, Members Only is just, it's a great ballsy first episode of a season. It could be, if we talked about this, it could be a finale, but it's the premiere, and that's really I love the Eugene storyline. I love that we just kind of get the one and done with him, though I also kind of wish we had a little more of him because he did such a beautiful job. It just explores a really interesting facet of the mob of, can I get out willingly? And we get that answer pretty loud and clear.
I agree. I think it feels like being shot out of a cannonball.
Yeah.
To start the season that way. And I think I said this on our coverage of that episode. It was the most exciting first episode for me of any of the seasons.
You did, and you said it would be a contender for your favorite episodes.
And here we are. So it still is. I love that things are relatively settled, even between Phil and Tony, before Tony is shot by Junior. That is classic Sopranos, right? Everything seems fine. Nope, my uncle has shot me. I'm probably dead. That scene is incredibly well acted by Gandolfini and by Dominic Giannisi. Amazing. The Eugene story is terrific. Terrific. And I know we'll talk more about its significance later, but the whole members only jacket sequence, the murder of the man in the fast food joint, all that stuff, it seems to open up something that, is a lot of foreshadowing going on, and that's potent. It feels potent. It's a great episode.
Agreed.
The Wheel of Fortune. It's I love that analogy because things are going great, and then the gamble of this entire lifestyle that they've created is you're just gonna get shot by your uncle making dinner.
Right. Well, you can inherit all this money. Your good news is not good news at all.
Yeah.
Right. You will not get to enjoy it. The last episode we're discussing is The Ride, which made its way on most of our lists, I think. Right?
Well, for me, yes.
Your number 1?
It was my number 2 and Lily's number 1. For me, The Ride, in addition to the wonderful continuation, to me, The Ride and Fleshy Part of the Thigh are the 1-2 punch of hope and the realization that this is not going anywhere good. So The Ride, in addition to being one of the most fascinating hours of television ever written about boredom, is also just visually beautiful. They do a great... The street fair is a cool new setting. In a 6th season of a show set in the same location, basically, it's hard to find visually exciting settings like this. But the street fair is a new and welcome jaunt. There's a lot of cool stuff going on. Christopher Slip, that sequence, it made my music moments, but it's just one of the most memorable.
The dolphin sequence.
The dolphin sequence. Yep. Paulie with the church and everything going on there. It's I don't know what else you would want from an hour of a television show that isn't in The Ride.
Yeah, I don't have much else to add to that, honestly.
The Ride also has one of my most bizarre scare moments where the Virgin Mary appears to Paulie on the stage.
Yes, correct.
The thing, I believe, is that episode.
Yeah, there's moments all the way through, and our discussion, as is often the case, brought up new stuff. I think that we talked about some of the religious imagery, and Jordan mentioned that the wine that they drink could have that religious connotation.
Yeah.
The Eucharist in the Catholic tradition And it's a fun episode. It's dynamic and got funny moments and all that stuff. But as I think you mentioned, Chris, when we were recording this, it might be a metaphor for the whole show. That when Tony says it's lost some of its pop, that's another way of saying the best is gone. Right?
Yeah. Yep. And just the, you want to talk about the circular nature of it all and just how it all kind of circles and everything is everything, to quote rapper Deluxe. Christopher shoots a guy in the gut as they're driving away, and it's just a throwaway. That guy somewhere in the Vipers, the Grizzly Adams douchebag, he's having his own Kevin Finnerty experience somewhere in a hospital bed, and Tony's just going on with his life. Pretty wild.
Yeah.
Pretty wild. What goes around comes around, and what comes around goes around.
Yeah. I'm sure we could have further discussion about how carnival games and the whole rigged nature of carnival games kind of apply to this whole thing, but I don't think we need to.
No. Well, I think that brings our 6A retrospective to a close. I am very much looking forward to 6B with you folks, especially since we are spoiler-free, but we like to give little teasers. I think the opener of 6B is going to make some top 3 lists of our series retrospective. I think it's that good.
How about that?
Soprano home movies.
I'm hoping for a happy ending for this whole thing.
You voting for a happy ending?
Yeah.
I think it's going to happen.
Happy ending? Let's do it.
This has been fantastic. In all seriousness, though, folks, covering this season has enriched my appreciation of 6A, a season I already defended vehemently, but this is a fantastic season of television. It's bold. It's as crazy and fantastic and imaginative as this series ever gets. Even the things that miss, you have to appreciate the boldness and the willingness to try something completely out of the box for this show, and the comfort level of not only probably some of the people in the show, but the viewers. The Sopranos really asks a lot of the viewers, and I respect that in an era where so many people are trying to create easy content. And it's refreshing, and it's why we're still talking about it 20 years later. 6A, it's been a ride. It's been a ride. Thank you all so much for your emails. Keep them coming. You can follow us on, we are still on X. We're not very active on X, but our meta accounts have been purged, unfortunately. They're still existent, but we can't post on them. And you can subscribe to our Patreon. We are on Patreon. You're going to get all the early updates and inside information. You can reach us. That's one of the other better ways to reach us directly. You can email us at TheSopranosPodcast@gmail.com. Thank you all for this wonderful ride. One more season left. I can't believe we're already here. 9 to go. I'm Chris D'Amato.
I'm Lily D'Amato.
I'm Paul Mancini.
And I'm Jordan Hugh.
And my son Sal is a Smurf shitting in his pajamas. We will see you all for season 6B. Thank you so much.
We're with the Vipers.